The Iron Range is a particularly very blue-collar area of Minnesota where obviously there's a lot of mining. 11% of the United States GDP comes out of the international port of Duluth, Minnesota. That is in large part because many other states have to get their stuff by rail or by semi to the closest international port, which would be Duluth, but also a lot of it is also because of the mining. The Iron Range up here kind of has its own mentality. The accents get a little bit more thick. The people get a lot nicer. It's a little bit like just hometown, small town feel to it. And there's the sun again. Yeah, it just comes and goes. There's a lot of four-wheeling up here. There's a lot of outdoor recreation, hunting for sure. You can obviously tell when there's speed limits for ATVs. Forest rangers roam around.
Life on the range has always been unique compared to the rest of the state. The towns that cropped up along the Vermilion, Cuyana, and Mesabi ranges were essentially boomtowns that started around 1900. In 1885, the population of towns on the range was around 5,000. By 1920, the population was over 100,000. Immigrants from all over Europe would come here to live a better life, and the range ended up having the most diverse population in the state. You had a variety of Croatians, Austrians, Germans, and the largest group being primarily Finnish. Finnish people still have a strong presence here in the Upper Great Lakes region. You'll find them in Canada, as well as in the US around Lake Superior, from the North Shore to the Iron Range to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, also known as the UP or Yoop. Workers would live in dwellings that were built by the mining companies leased on mining company land. Because these mines were the only source of revenue, the other may be logging. Companies would be the only de facto government up here. The villages were technically company towns on the range. Housing was provided, water came from a communal company pump, electricity was ran into the area, and provisions in the general store like clothing, boots, groceries, or tools were all purchased from the company by the workers. Your supervisor would also kind of act as a local lawman. Rent was typically $5 to $10 per month, and workers would make about $5 per week. To put that into perspective, across the US today, on average, 45% of your income goes to rent. For workers on the range, they were spending about 25% on rent, so there was a good deal of money to be made here. Families were encouraged. Workers with families were less likely to organize into labor unions or go on strike. Also, the companies would tend to put immigrants of different language backgrounds together, so it was harder for them to unionize as well. Families, however, would have children that attended public school and would learn English, making them community translators. English speaking among the first boomtown workers was as low as 10%. Life was also not easy in the mines. They worked long hours and made little money compared to what the ore was selling for. The laborers were on a contract labor system, meaning miners would receive payment based off of the amount of ore produced, which led to its own problems, like bribery. Gardening was encouraged by mining companies as it would help the workers and the company save money, along with keeping laborers busy in off-work hours. Potatoes, known for being able to grow in poor soil, were very popular. By keeping them occupied, they would be less prone to loiter, organize strikes, or get drunk in saloons. During Prohibition, blind pigs were secret dive bar establishments that would be built outside city limits. Local law enforcement couldn't go after them, but companies could, and they were often shut down. One interesting bit about the range is that entire towns had to be mobile. The land that the workers lived on, and the towns that they were built on, was leased by the mining companies. When the mining company would need to excavate under a city, the buildings would either be moved or burned down. Building-moving companies sprung up around the range, assisting homeowners and business owners in moving their buildings off of their foundations and into new locations. Some of these buildings that the companies would move were 3 to 4 stories tall. I even had to stop on the side of the highway to dodge one of these buildings and ended up striking up a conversation with the local.
So I'm on my way there while I'm up here.
Yeah.
I went to the Lost 40.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Those trees are just...
They're freaking huge. I can't imagine what it would have looked like when pioneers were first coming through here.
Yeah.
A lot of veterans of foreign wars would return to the Iron Range and they wouldn't know where they lived. If you look at maps that are old enough, you'll find that many towns of the same names have been relocated, some by several miles, to make room for mining. There are unfortunately dozens of towns up here in the range that were left behind when the mines closed. Taconite Harbor is one such town, where if you were to go into the forest off the highway, many of the apple trees and retaining walls or foundations may remain, and nature has taken the land back. The range has a history of entire towns of thousands of people disappearing over the course of a few short years. People would either independently move their houses out with one of the building moving companies, or local fire departments would run drills in houses that they burned down. The famous singer and songwriter Bob Dylan was born in Duluth and raised in Hibbing, Minnesota on the range. His folk songs, The Times They Are A-Changin', and especially the song North Country Blues, are based on the boom and bust hard times of the range. Today, there are plenty of mines that are still active and many small towns still soldier on, but like all non-renewable resources, these will eventually dry up. The towns of the range will either have to attract or foster a new array of business, such as tech or biotourism, or move on. 2 new mines of a whole new and different type, however, have been proposed up here that has garnered a ton of controversy. We'll get into those in the next and last episode on The Range.